Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or the guests are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hi there. Welcome to the 44th episode of A Couple Takes on MS. Hi, this is Dan Digman.
And hi, it's me, Dan's wife, Jennifer.
And we're here, obviously, A Couple Takes on MS. We're a couple, and I have MS. I have relapsing remitting MS.
And I have secondary progressive multiple sclerosis.
And what we do is just look at certain issues and take it and look at them from different perspectives of life with MS. One is a man with multiple sclerosis.
One is a woman with MS.
And one who can still walk.
And one who uses a wheelchair. And we just see the world similarly, but we also have different perspectives. And we realize that sharing our takes on multiple sclerosis, we can learn something about ourselves, but we can also meet and greet and learn from our community of people living with the disease.
And hopefully it helps to give you, the listener, whether you have MS or your loved one has MS, as a caregiver, as somebody living with the disease, we want to help you and encourage you and move forward beyond the disease. And what we're looking at today is a question of, does MS make you cry? And how often do you cry because of your multiple sclerosis?
And Dan cleverly titled this episode, Tears for Your MS Fears, or Tears for MS Fears. And both Dan and I were young in the 80s. We were born in the 70s. And so Tears for Fears is music that we listen to. And now, having lived with multiple sclerosis, both of us in close to 2 decades, I think Tears for Fears, that really explains MS. And so I have recently dipped my foot in the Twitter pool, and I'm trying to be more present on Twitter as Dan and I together. Let's be honest, he does the majority of the heavy lifting with Twitter, but we have had experienced Twitter, but composing tweets. But recently, with my own account, I came across a tweet from our mutual friend Dave, who wrote, when you are facing a life challenge, it's understandable if you cry a river. Afterward, build a bridge, then cross it any way you can. So that was his tweet, which I thought was really...
It was very profound, and it was our friend Dave Becksfield, and he manages the website Active MSer, and he has a lot of great things. But when I saw Dave's post, but Jennifer retweeted it as Monday Motivation, and those are really profound things. That's where Dave is so insightful.
And a number of people retweeted it, or they liked it. It got a lot of the community, my MS Twitter community, our MS Twitter community involved. I mean, just the idea that when you're facing a challenge, you may cry about it, because God knows those of us living with MS, or even those who aren't living with this particular chronic illness, when we're facing a challenge, there are times when you just break down and you cry and you just don't know what to do. But Dave's encouraging us to build a bridge, to get over that lake of tears, do whatever you can to cross it, to move forward. And so we thought that was pretty insightful and worth talking about more today.
And I think that was one of the things where I wish I would have seen that or had that words of inspiration when I was first diagnosed. I mean, granted, they're still good and ring true today, but I guess it's the question of how often does multiple sclerosis lead you to tears? How often does living with the disease make you cry?
Well, before I spill out my heart to you,
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to do the same. I mean, you said when you were first diagnosed, you wish you had these words of inspiration, these profound words. Did you have a hard time when you were first diagnosed with MS? Were you in tears a lot of the time? I mean, if you don't mind being honest. Putting yourself back in 19-year-ago Dan Dignan.
I think the day I was diagnosed, I think I cried more when I learned that the cause of the symptoms I was having, quote, was most likely multiple sclerosis. I bawled, I sobbed, but then the next... Go ahead.
Why did you bawl? Why did you sob?
I remember I had gotten a phone call from my doctor who told me this over the phone, because I worked like in a town about an hour away, and he called to let me know the initial report. I mean, obviously everything was contingent on further testing and everything. When he first said those words, most likely multiple sclerosis, I was, Mr. Braveheart. I'm just like, oh, okay, I got multiple sclerosis. All right, well that's okay.
Not a big deal.
I can live with that.
On.
It's a disease. Blah blah blah. When I hung up the phone with Dr. Holmes, it made me. I just went into just a total sob fest, because it's just the reality. I realized then that if I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, this is not a cold I'm going to get over eventually. This is not a broken arm and a cast that eventually they'll cut off the cast. I'm carrying this sucker with me for the rest of my life, and it could get drastically worse, and I have no control over this. And so that was scary. But I will say then, after that day of sobbing and tears and stuff, I woke up the next morning and I was fine. Because I realized then, the very next day, I was told I most likely had multiple sclerosis. I was the same person I was the day before. Nothing changed.
And that's pretty profound, and I've always been impressed by that statement. Because you realize, just because I was told I have multiple sclerosis, I'm still the same Dan I was the day before. And I think that that's tough, and that's how you are. That you don't let the disease hold you back. And that, I mean, I don't want to say I envy that about you or anything like that. I just think it's really good. But my course of the disease has been a little different.
Well, let me throw that out then. I mean, then when you were first diagnosed, and did you cry when you were first told that you...
Oh, heck yeah. I was a basket case. Because, as I've mentioned before, I learned or I read as much as I could about MS, but I didn't understand, and I just thought that every single symptom I read would eventually land in my lap, and I was not going to be walking. I was not going to be able to hold my bladder. I was going to have speech problems. I was going to go blind. I mean, every worst case scenario. So I think that had a lot to do with my beginning tears when I was diagnosed back in 1997. But I think now I'd be dishonest if I said I don't cry now. I mean, I cry all the time, I can have a particularly good day, and then the next day something go wrong and it'll just send me into a fit of tears. Or I did Rituxan. Not that I'm advocating Rituxan or any sort of medication. Dan and I aren't doing that, but me personally, I take a Rituxan infusion to try and slow down the progression of my MS. And so I did this infusion a couple weeks ago, and it's a piggyback. I get the infusion of Rituxan, but I also get a little dose of steroids. Steroids wreak havoc on my emotions, and I'm a basket case. I mean, that's just the side effect for me. So then there's that initial little breakdown. But then there's the reality a few days later when I'm not miraculously all better, and it smacks you in the face like, oh, you're kidding me. I still have multiple sclerosis. Which of course, duh, like you said, it's a chronic illness. But I think when that reality hits you in the face, sometimes that makes me cry.
And when I think, and I guess the question for you, the question for everybody out there, and let us know if MS makes you cry, if you cry because of your MS or because of things, and why you cry. I mean, reach out to us on our websites, danandjenniferdigman.com, or reach us on Twitter at danjendig, and just join in the conversation. But I guess the question I have then is, what is the source of the tears? I mean, is it are we crying? Because and do I cry right now? I don't believe that I cry because of my MS. I think it's the dealing with it. I think it's the frustration. And
I
that's
think
and I don't I think
frustration.
and because I guess is it crying out of frustration, disappointment? I mean, do you cry about things you lost? Or?
I don't want to equate myself to a baby. I am certainly not doing that. But if you look at a 2 or 3 year old child and they get so frustrated they burst into tears. Sometimes I feel like that. When my hands aren't working. I mean, for heaven's sakes, I'm a grown woman, and when I can't feed myself, I will get frustrated, and I can't find a constructive way. Maybe that's something I need to look into more, is finding a constructive outlet for my frustration. But I'll be so frustrated, I will break down into tears. Or I'm upset that my friends are walking around, or they're taking trips, or they're going places that I can no longer live a life like that. Or I think frustration is the main reason that I cry. And I cry, I don't think you can simply just mourn oh, I was diagnosed with MS, I'm done. I think a little bit as the disease progresses, every little bit of progression, I mourn a little bit for the person I used to be. But then, if you're really honest, as I'm getting older, in my 40s, I mourn for my 20-year-old Jennifer, or I long for those days, but I like my life now. So if I'm being logical, like I think I'm being right now, I wouldn't just burst into tears. But it is at those moments when the disease is just filled to the brim with frustration that I just lose it.
And that's where I often comment that I think, because you said something about a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and everything, they cry when they get frustrated. And I've joked that I think the reason that kids cry then is they don't have the ability to just drop an F-bomb.
I can believe that.
And that's where I tend to go when I get frustrated. I don't cry because of things. There's nothing you've seen me, and nothing relieves it better than just that properly placed F-bomb, and just so I don't cry out of frustration. I think sometimes, and you probably don't see it, I don't cry. I get weepy or teary-eyed and stuff sometimes when I get overwhelmed, and it's just
that's interesting.
Well, you look at what we do. Think of all that we as people with MS are dealing with on a daily basis, and it's like we can get through one day at a time. I get it.
Yes.
But there's just times where you're just like, I'm just so overwhelmed that it's like, yeah, we got this. Yeah, I'm making it through today, but I see how hard it is from
Yeah,
day to
that's
day,
true.
how hard that is, and it's just a thought, am I going to be able to keep this up forever? Am I going to be able to continue to do this? And
So sometimes your frustration or your overwhelmedness is when you look to the future.
it's well, I think it's looking to the future after seeing what I've already endured and everything I've put into this. I mean, I feel like I'm doing fine, or I'm managing, I'm staying strong, staying strong. It's a lot of work. It's been a lot of work to do this, and you start thinking, do I have enough tank in the gas to
Enough
continue?
gas in the tank.
That
Strike
too.
that first
Reverse
thing.
it. Yes.
Willy Wonka.
Exactly. Well, but okay. So, but you see
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Am I going to be able to keep this up? Because I think there have been times that I've told you it's just like I'm tired. I mean, and I'll keep going, keep doing it, but it's just like you get tired, and I think then it's not. And again, it's not like sobbing cry, but it's just tears where you're just like, and I think you need that escape to just let it go, and obviously then you feel better, or I feel better, and just to have that moment. That's where and that the music. I mean, turning to Springsteen, turning to inspirational something to give you that thing to to
That
build
kind
that
of release.
the release and to build the bridge, and so you wake up, and again I always say wake up the next day. I'm no different than I was the day before, and I'm still just as strong as I was. Because I think, in building off of what Dave Bexfield said in his comment, I think it was so profound. But it's just like, we as people with multiple sclerosis, we as just human beings need to give ourselves that outlet to know that it's okay to have those moments.
It's okay to have those moments. And I think that's where you walk that fine line between what is sadness and what is depression. When is sadness something where you need to look for help or you need to reach out? But I think sadness, it's starting to rain where we are right now. And I often think of my tears kind of like rain. Like the tears will just change the atmosphere. Like if I feel like pent up sadness or frustration, sometimes I just let it go, like Mother Nature when she just has a really quick, hard rainstorm, and then it just changes what it's like outside. That if I can just, if I just give in, I guess, surrender to this crazy mood that I'm having, and I shed tears for maybe like 5 minutes, and then I compose myself. I think, do you ever feel different after you cry? Because I feel like sometimes I have a clearer head.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because it's just those times when you have, and again, I don't know if I necessarily cry per se, but when you have just those emotional moments, and it's just like that release of things, and like you make a good point with the rain. I mean, sometimes we get a good dousing rain, and sometimes it's just a quick little thing to
Fast storm.
just a quick
Clear the
shower.
air.
Yeah, and so I think really that's what we have to do. But at the same time, then we have to get over it. Then, and I mean, what keeps you then? I mean, looking at 20 plus years of living with the disease for you, I've had it for nearly 20 years. What then helps you to stop the tears? What inspires you to build the bridge?
I think what's helped me this summer especially is I've gotten involved with a little more exercise. And certainly I'm not, walking and doing karate and kicking butt here and there. But, I can do little activities. So when I need to clear my head, I can stand in my standing frame, or I can put my legs on my pedaler and just get some motion, some movement, or just activity, something that makes me feel strong. will help clear my head, because sometimes it's really easy for me, and I don't know what if it's like for any of you out there, where I just feel so beat down by this damn disease, where I'm just like, oh, are you serious? What more are you going to take from me, multiple sclerosis? But if I can counter back and say, okay, yeah, you can take whatever you want, but I can still stand in my standing frame, or I'm still able to write a grocery list, or I'm still able to eat lunch with my fork and get food into my mouth. Just those little things. And so I find that being active helps me. And sometimes it clears my head, where I just, if I turn on a silly TV show and strap my feet into my motorized pedaler and I get some movement, that seems to help me. What about you? I mean, do you find activity kind of does that for
Well,
you?
back in the day when I used to run, I mean, running was such a great release. I mean, I don't run anymore. I mean, just because we've had these discussions, my feet don't move like they were, and I was falling too many times
Right.
running and everything. But I listen to music. I listen to music really, really loud.
And when you lose your hearing, we'll
My,
cross that bridge when we
Well, I
get
was
to
going to
it.
say that that's a future concern, but I mean, I listen to music. I think the music, the prayer. I say, you do a lot of talking to God. I think.
Do you ever, I don't want to say wallow, that's maybe not the correct word, because I don't think what I'm doing is wallowing, but do you ever think about the things that you've lost since you've been diagnosed? Or do you try not to look at the bad stuff, you just move forward and don't look back?
I don't wallow. I think it's.
That's pretty
I mean,
impressive.
but it is what it is. I don't run anymore. I can't play basketball with my friends anymore because my hands are numb, so I can't dribble. I can play really good defense, but I can't shoot. But I don't wallow because it's just like I think there are other things out there for me, and you find ways to capitalize on the strengths that I still have. I think, knock wood, I don't believe I've lost anything that I really have cared about.
Well, that's good perspective. And I think that believing that and focusing more on what you still have really keeps you going. I know that you passed that. You've tried to help me with that. And when I look at what I'm still so fortunate and able to do, that helps me stop wallowing, snaps me out of that.
Well, and I think that you make a good point, where it's just like you start to appreciate when you say when you can you can lift the fork up to your mouth to feed yourself, or when you can do, and it's just like appreciating all that still is there. I mean, because there's things that have been lost. I mean, that's I'm not saying that I've been unscathed, but but it's just that it's like things I can live without. Can I? And if you lost something that you quote unquote couldn't live without, you find new things that'll
Right.
help you continue to make it through.
I found today, I went and I volunteered with my church, got involved with the community, and I was able to connect with some new members in my community and with a new outlet. And I wasn't saving the world and I wasn't doing a whole lot, but what I did made me feel really strong. And I think, if I play a game of Scrabble when I'm feeling a little brain drained and I go and I lay the smack down on my computer opponent, that makes me feel stronger. So I think, getting involved or reaching out to the Facebook community or to MS Buddy, my MS Buddy on Healthline's social media platform. I think that those things help me so I don't wallow in my sadness or my fears. And I try not to focus on the things that scare me because, there's boogeymen everywhere. You tell little kids, like, "Oh, don't believe in the boogeyman." Well, I'm a grown up and I don't need to believe in my MS boogeyman. I don't need to focus on that. I need to just focus on the good stuff.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, as a little kid, you were always afraid of the boogeyman being under the bed, and all you needed was mom and dad to come in and tell you and show you that there's nothing under there. And I think sometimes it's easy living with MS, like when you were first diagnosed and you read the book and you saw everything that's going to go wrong with
Right.
you. And it's just like you can't, could those things happen? Do those things happen? Absolutely they do. But on some levels, you don't have any control over when that hits, so enjoy it while you have it.
Absolutely. And focus. I think we both try and live focusing more on the good days than the bad days. And yes, we have tears and yes, we have fears, but we focus and we try and live concentrating on the good things that have happened. And I think that would be our one combined powerful thought, is that we try and focus on the positive and not look at the fears or the tears.
Exactly, and with that, and know that those of us living with multiple sclerosis, we truly are not fighting this, battling this, living with this alone, that we have a huge community of people. I mean, so reach out to the people that make you stronger, to help you overcome those fears. There's things online, Facebook communities that'll help you. I mean, right there, just with Dave Bexfield, coming back to him, active MSer, with his quote, you find these quotes, you find the people, they'll help you make it through. So hopefully through this conversation today with us on A Couple Takes MS, we've helped you to connect with and overcome or find reasons and ways that you can build a bridge to overcome your tears. So until next time, this has been Dan Digman.
And this is me, Jennifer Digman.
And it's A Couple Takes MS. Thanks again to Blue Draft Kid for composing the theme music for our show. And thanks to the MS&Me Radio Network for having us on the programs. Take care.